Walter Wonkite. I'm already into the 420, damn it.
So what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
I'm trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.
What's the matter with that cat there?
Must be full of reefer.
Full of reefers?
Yeah, man.
Mean that cat's high?
Sailing.
Sailing?
Lightly.
We now wander off the beaten path with an update from the Reefer Reporter.
Hello and welcome to the Reefer Reporters. It's September the 24th, 2018, and we are live and we are your audio digest featuring Canadian and international cannabis news from the previous week. My name is Al Graham, and this week, Northern Ontario, Kim Cooper joins me at the news desk. Hello, Kim. How are you?
Oh, I'm not doing too bad today, Al. Fall is in the air. Harvest is happening pretty soon. Life's pretty good.
Yeah, fall sure is in the air. This morning it was pretty nippy.
It really was.
Did I see you post like -3?
Yeah, plus the wind chill. That wasn't including the wind chill. Took it down to over past -5 when you included the night air that we had overnight last night. So yeah, it was a frosty morning in Timmins.
All right, keep your plants covered, keep them alive.
Yes. Yes.
All right, talking about plants and stuff, let's get on with the news.
It sounds good. It's been a very busy 7 days in cannabis news across the globe.
That's right. Well, today we'll get started with the fact that the government, and we're not surprised about this, the government is taking to social media in order to find out what the Canadians really feel about cannabis.
Tell me how you really feel about it. I mean, that only happens on social media platforms, so the government thinks, I guess. People aren't forthcoming in surveys and that kind of thing, and they've come to that realization in the Canadian government. So they're turning their sights on social media platforms and trying to gauge what people's real feelings are about cannabis and legalization in Canada.
Like, did they not think that the people who were writing them and saying, let's have, private retail, let's do this, let's do that, all positive things, like open lounges that allow, sales and that, that was Canadian speaking, but it was something that they rejected.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this government, they seem to have their own way of doing things. They don't want to hear from Canadians coming out of the box and stepping up and using our right to contact them via the Canadian Postal Service and letting them know our views on things. They don't seem to pay attention to that kind of thing anymore. No, they're looking at social media and they're exploring public perceptions of cannabis use and related behaviors, and is key to developing a better understanding on how best to communicate to the general public without the risk of use and engaging in certain behaviors. So I guess some of the winning bidders will be writing algorithms to pick out this data from social media platforms.
Yeah, exactly. They said the new government tendering notice posted this week describes a project that will collect this information from Canadians, as you said, and how often they light up and where they light up. And what type of cannabis the users prefer, including criminal activities they're searching for.
Yeah. So they're going to be making some algorithms, as people on social media, Facebook and alike, are well aware of. These algorithms dictate a lot of the things that you see in the news feed and what you can do and what you can't do. They're also used to mine information from your social media platform. So, what you do say on social media does get picked up if it's something that is being mined for. If there are keywords in there that they're looking for, they will grab that statement and put it in the database.
Well, Kim, I've got to say, if people wonder, they've never seen any of this. Sure, everybody says that we're being watched, government's grabbing all this information. But as we found out, actually, like moments before we went live, you're an example of this.
Yeah, I can tell you firsthand, it does happen. I am astonished that it does and that it happened to me. As you said moments before we went on the air live, I put up a post on social media regarding the current election that is taking place in different regions across the country. My region in particular, Timmins, people are canvassing. And I was contacted by a candidate in this race disputing something that I put up on social media because he figures I inadvertently named him when I did not mention any names.
So there you go. Even though this isn't an example of the federal government, this is an example of still a government, a municipal government, people getting involved from something they saw on social media.
Yeah. I was mistaken in my accounting on my social media platform that I put up. It was in regards to somebody that was canvassing, and I brought up patients' rights for medicating in public being outside of the legal regime of recreational cannabis. And I was astonished to find out he was unaware of that. And he sits on the police services board who is making the decisions for arresting and persecuting patients in our region that are currently using. To me, this is something that the Police Services Board people should know about while they're making these plans. The person that contacted me is running for mayor in this city, and he stated that he was the only one that it was on the Police Services Board, and he was not at my door. That's when I realized I had misspoke. It was a council member that had approached me, my doorway, and I spoke to at the front door there, not the person running for mayor. So it was astonishing to me that this person would reach out to me to clarify the fact that he did not speak to this issue instead of actually speaking to the issue.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you got an all candidates meeting coming up, I'm sure, and you'll be able to address that in the public forum.
Yes, and you can bet your booties that I will be.
All right, let's go from that. Let's move on to our next story. That happens to deal with somebody who got a federal license to grow cannabis, but they don't plan on growing it.
Yeah, a bit of a different situation here. Not sure really. We had a discussion about this. Shoppers Drug Mart has jumped into the playing field. They've been issued a license by Health Canada to dispense medical cannabis. They don't plan on growing it. They plan on being, I guess, a sort of dispensary.
Well, their approval says that they've been licensed medical cannabis producer.
Yeah, but they don't plan on growing.
But yeah, correct. What I look at it as is they're looking for the dispense part of it all.
Yeah, and you've got to obtain, I think, because of the way the rules and the regs are written, if I'm not mistaken, you have to obtain both licenses in order to secure that space. So perhaps that's their end run around trying to grab the medicinal marketplace for a dispensary for patients on site and get rid of the craft market. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, well, they applied back in 2016, and I can remember everybody was commenting like, "What? Yeah, this can't be right." And like, they got a license, but what would they be inspecting?
Yeah,
they don't plan on building.
Sure.
They don't plan on doing anything, so they don't have a building to show anybody.
It's very confusing situation with Shoppers Drug Mart because, as you said, there's no inspections taking place on their grow facility, which is prerequisite for everybody else that goes for a license for a grow op in this country. So if they're not planning on growing, they haven't built any, how did they pass those inspections? There's a lot of questions about this deal, that's for sure. You got the dispensing end apart, as well as being legally allowed for them to mail it as well, to do mail orders to licensed patients. Yeah. So it's an evolving situation with Shoppers Drug Mart. They've got all those agreements with all those licensed producers to supply them. So the fact that they've got a supply, and licensed producers can supply other licensed producers, we've seen that in the past. Yeah. So maybe this is a way for them to go around that. But still, where's their building? Yeah, where's the building? Where's the structure? How did the inspectors pass something that isn't built? Yeah.
Well, see, they believe that being that they are the ones who dispense other drugs, that they are fit to do this as well. They say that they have the necessary expertise to mitigate the potential risks associated with medical cannabis, including harm reduction interactions. Not contradictions. And potential addictive behavior.
With cannabis, really, there's no evidence that cannabis is addictive. That's a given under science. There's no evidence of addiction. If pharmacists are going to tout that they're the ones that are most capable and have the tools available to dispense this product, then as far as I think, they should be educated from the onset with their statement. There's no discussion in here that you can't overdose on the product or anything like that. We're talking about harm reduction still from a standpoint of a plant-based medicine that our bodies have an endocannabinoid system that we feed off of. It's already proven you can't overdose on this medicine, so it cannot be compared to any other pharmaceutical currently on the market. So that does not make them any more prepared than anyone else.
But don't they distribute the drug that right now we have an epidemic in North America with?
Yes, they do. Their harm reduction programs aren't doing very well there.
Then are they the best people?
Exactly.
They can't override a doctor's prescription that I'm aware of, but I'm sure that they can do something. Speak up.
Yes, they can. Every pharmacist can pick up a phone if they want to, but they choose not to because that'll bite into the almighty buck.
Yeah, well, for sure.
Yeah, Shoppers Drug Mart. Lots for them in the future.
I've posted this, I don't mind saying it on here, but the fact that it almost gives me the impression that as we'll get into later on, dispensaries being raided and shut down, and then all of a sudden we have a company that dispenses drugs get a license to produce and sell it. So that tells me that possibility, and they're going to use this. We have the education thing and everything, and they'll use that as a way in order to take over from the existing dispensaries.
Well, I mean, the existing dispensaries that are on the marketplace now have been counseling patients on cannabinoid therapy alongside of a few doctors that know about it for some places 20 years now. If anybody has the expertise, I'm pretty sure that they do at this point. This is just another example of corporate Canada taking over a mom and pop industry.
Yeah, they'll become the new legalized government version of a cannabis dispensary.
Another arm of corporate Canada.
Yeah. Okay, talking about cannabis, we see our next article here wonders about the shortage that possibly coming October 17th, and they wonder about importing of cannabis.
Yes, well, apparently under federal law, they're not allowed to import cannabis for recreational consumption in this country. I emphasize that word because there is a loophole. That's right. Yeah. There is a loophole, isn't there, Al?
That's right, because nothing in principle would stop a licensed producer from supplying the medical market with imported cannabis and devoting their entire domestic production to recreational users.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I'm going to use the government's line here. What about the children? Okay? I'm going to ask them that point fucking blank right now. What about the children? We have kids across this country using cannabinoid therapy for stuff like Dravet syndrome, seizures, a host of ailments that children are suffering in this country. It takes these parents a long time to find a medication strain that works. Once they find that strain that works, deviating from that strain can be catastrophic to a child. If that medicine is now open and available to the rec market first, over and above patients, where does that leave little Johnny?
Oh, big time. I can see where you're coming from. I was wondering, okay, where she's coming from here. And and we've seen that. I've seen them on social media, parents that are saying, hey, So actually Bedrocan, they shut down one of their CBD strains, and patients are scrambling. They're posting on social media looking for something the same thing. And if they give, precedence over the recreational market, things like what you described will happen.
Exactly. I am so sick and tired of hearing this government use the phrase, what about the children, when it suits their needs for enforcement and rule of law. But they're not willing to speak up and say it when it really means caring about these kids.
Yeah. Well, right now, as we know, you can't import recreational cannabis, but other countries are talking up and wanting that. Includes Mexico. They've come out in strongly in favor of legalization, in part as a way of trying to dampen the country's international, internal drug war.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and once again, it's legalization coming on the backs of patients. We've seen it time and time again. Patients are speaking out across the country saying, hey, you can't do this to us. But it's happening. And why is it happening? Once again, we go right back to that almighty buck. They're projecting $1 billion in sales between October and December of this year. Dollar signs is all these companies and this government sees right now.
Big money. There's big money. That's for sure. That's for sure. All righty. Now, on to somebody we know, friend of the Pace Radio Show and all others here at Lifestyle Radio. And that happens to do with a big test here that was done with CTV, and they went around and they got 2 patients, and they wanted to know what the effect of cannabis laws would be on the drivers. So they actually had them consume cannabis and do tests.
Yeah, so we get to put the DREs that are out there along with the Drager 5000 to the test, as you said, with a friend to the show and a friend to the podcast. McMahon, as everybody knows, out in BC, formerly was called Opus 420 when he hosted a show at Vapor Central in Toronto on Pot TV. Very well known in the community by all, very heavy medicinal cannabis consumer. And he got to take part in this little test.
That's right. He did, as well as a lady by the name of Cheryl. She says that cannabis has given her life back to her since she's been using a cannabinoid oil. Okay, she's not smoking cannabis. She's taking an oil with an eyedropper, and she takes this on a daily basis to help deal with tremors and other chronic illnesses.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we had these 2 test subjects. Both of them are medicinal cannabis patients, and they went through the process should they ever get pulled over by a DRE or a police department in the place that they live out there in Vancouver. The test results, to me, the results are flawed at best.
Well, you got to remember, she is she doesn't drive after consuming cannabis or oil. She doesn't, to me, seem like a person who is normally a cannabis consumer. Whereas we know Mick, he's been involved in this for years, at least 17 years for his medicinal use of it all. So, he's got lots of experience in using cannabis. And I'm sure we both watched the video, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Now, the lady in question that has the tremors, she even stated she feels a little bit, what she said, I think she said, you used the word loopy.
Loopy, something along the line.
Yeah, after she consumes. So she wouldn't even attempt to drive her car. So it's good that she realizes that and she knows that. And I think that holds true for the majority of the population. We know we shouldn't be behind the wheel, and we're not going to do it when that is the particular case.
Whereas a drunk person doesn't always know that.
That's right. You don't have the same presence of mind when you're intoxicated on alcohol that you do when you're intoxicated at all on cannabis. You still at least have some presence of mind with cannabis intoxication. So I think they're very different scenarios too. The lady in question, she failed her test, of course, and she even stated, I shouldn't be driving. I
can
don't
see in the
feel like I
video.
should be driving.
You can see in the video she couldn't even walk the
She
white
couldn't
line,
walk
the
the
straight
white line. She couldn't pass any of the tests at the roadside test. She was an
And
epic fail.
this was
Um,
an hour
yeah,
after she took her eyedropper of oil.
1 hour. Now,
yeah.
my question is, this lady suffers from tremors. Would she be able to pass this test without medication?
Good question. Did they pre-test them beforehand? It doesn't say.
Not that the story indicates. If they did, they're not showing the results of that. If they didn't, I think it's a lapse in foresight there, because somebody that has issues with tremors, we usually have issues walking. Walking a straight line can be difficult for a non-medicated person suffering from tremors.
Yeah. Well, as we know, Mick, he was tested shortly after consuming.
Yeah.
Police had concerns about his ability to safely drive a vehicle, but they say, in quotes, we don't believe he's impaired.
That's right.
But affected enough that we could suspend his license for 24 hours.
Yes. They would give him a 12 to 24-hour suspension, just without charges. Come back and get your car tomorrow, because we're not too sure. Is basically what it came down to. And that was quite a while after consumption.
Yeah. Well, let's also look at this too. It doesn't mention this in the write-up, but in the video, they turned around and they retested Mick 10 hours after he consumed his bowl of cannabis.
Yes.
And it still showed.
Positive.
Correct.
Yeah, positive. He came back 10 hours after consuming one bowl of cannabis. 10 hours later, he got a positive test result on the Draeger 5000. This took place in Vancouver, BC, where the weather is warm. It is still summer time outside when this test happened. It wasn't cold. I mentioned that because there's been some concern that these machines will malfunction in the cold. So that wasn't the case here. Perfectly good weather, sunny day, and the test showed him positive after 10 hours. So how many people are going to clog our court systems because they are being charged with a crime that isn't actually even a crime because it's a faulty test result?
Many will, unfortunately, until the first one defeats the law. And I know that one of the licensed producers or somebody connected to the industry has offered to pay those court costs and take it to the court. They want to challenge it.
Yes. There are actually a few law firms out there that are just scratching at the bit to get in front of the justices regarding a case of this type with the new cannabis regime, because some of the rules that are being put in place are clearly unconstitutional.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting.
Yes.
All righty, Kim, we got one more story.
One more. We'll squeeze in one more, and this is a good one.
And then we'll go for break. So we're just discussing, there's this silly machine and the way it's going to be used as a law. And our next story is from Vice News, and they have a running list of Canada's dumbest new cannabis laws.
Yeah, some of the dumbest laws in this country that are taking place in different provinces from coast to coast. I'll tell you, Al, this is quite the list, and we start off in, of course, Quebec.
That's right, Quebec, and they get number one spot because they're banning the sale of anything with a cannabis leaf on it.
Yep. You got a T-shirt, you've got an ashtray, you've got a bong, you've got a poster. If it's got a pot leaf on it and it's in your shop, you can no longer sell it after October the 17th.
Yeah, and as we mentioned last week, $2,500 minimum fine, $62.50 and up to $62.50. That's for the first offense. Repeat offenders, $125,000.
Yeah, so big money fines for displaying a cannabis leaf in the province of Quebec. I can see this going to court.
So yeah, I can see this. I can see the next one going to court too, because up until that Quebec law, this was the next dumbest one.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. This is just hysterical.
Yeah. Go ahead.
BC residents to grow federally allotted mound of 4 plants per household with a big caveat: the plants must not be visible from spaces off the property.
So if you live in an apartment and you face a nice sunny south, you get the south sun, so you got sun coming throughout the day. If somebody from down below, 19 floors down, sees your cannabis plants, you're facing 3 months in jail.
If you live in a house in a rural community, even in downtown, if you can find a house in Vancouver, and you've got a beautiful backyard that's nice and spacious, and you put your 4 plants up, if they go above the fence level and they can be seen by the street, you're going to jail.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a bylaw that prevents you from having a fence that's too tall.
That's right. They're not going to allow you to erect a 15-foot fence to cover your plants.
That's right. And then the next one goes to Nova Scotia, and that's because they're selling liquor and cannabis in the same store.
Yeah, I mean, boo. That one's a really big, dumb one. Let's not put them together. Even on the Government of Canada's own website, they advise against the use of alcohol with cannabis, but yet we have this province selling them together.
Yeah. I heard this another one too. Manitoba and Quebec not allowing the residents to grow cannabis.
Yeah, they're outlawing the growing of cannabis completely in those provinces. Not sure how they can get away with outlawing something that's federally legal.
That's right. Well, it's obviously going to be a big challenge in court, and people are saying it's nothing but a tax grab. It's unconstitutional territory is what they're saying, because these fines are just huge.
Yeah, and anything that's punitive measures against you for something that is effectively legal is against a constitutional right. No province can make you an outlandish fine that basically makes that legal thing illegal. Not allowed to do it.
Yeah. Now, the next one, no blazing on boats in Ontario, BC, PEI, or Manitoba.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine? You can't go fishing and puff a joint. What about the cruise boats that are out there on the waters? I've been on a cruise with a member of the community where he rents a boat and we all go and party, and I mean, there's a nice indoor cuddy with a meal and you party on the deck and we're consuming the entire time. It's wonderful going out on Lake Ontario and some of the other wonderful lakes in the north and enjoying some consumption.
Does that include somebody out on the kayak?
I'm not sure. Is the kayak considered a boat?
It's like a motorized vehicle. Doesn't always mean it's a car.
That's right. That's I guess one to look up for kayakers out there.
Maybe. I'll let you know. All right. Let's go for break.
Sounds good. It's medication time.
That's right. And as we go for break, our listeners will hear a bit of an NBC cannabis and wine report, talking about alcohol, cannabis and wine report. And then you'll know we're coming back when we hear from the Salads singing all about it. You're listening to the Reefer Reporters. We are live here on LifestyleRadio.net.
Hey, this is Cheech.
And this is Chong.
And you're listening to Lifestyle Radio. What is it? Lifestyle Radio. Say it one more time.
420 Radio?
Ooh.
Hang up and try again.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
Back now at 7:42 with our special series, Red, White, and Green, How America is Going to Pot.
California became the first state to legalize medical marijuana. That was back in 1996. And in a few months, recreational use will be legal there as well. And that's got a lot of people wondering how the state's wine country will be impacted. Here's NBC's Joe Fryer.
The vineyards roll for miles along the rustic roads of Sonoma County. California's famous reds and whites, the fruit heavy on the vine in late summer.
This is the Skittles Blue Dream.
But these days, another crop, cannabis, is also ready for harvest just down the road.
Wine and cannabis go well together, and they have for a long time.
And just as wineries advertise their tours and tasting rooms, marijuana entrepreneurs are looking to do the same.
Cannabis tours have definitely been happening somewhat underground for years, and now we're looking at and we're exploring how can cannabis tourism responsibly integrate into Sonoma County's culture.
Erin Gore is married to a winemaker, but her business is pot, organic edibles designed for a calming high. She's optimistic that wine and weed can appeal to the same clientele.
From a marketing opportunity and consumer point of view, we see them being very collaborative.
It's a beautiful sativa.
Look at this one.
Yeah, it's got some great piney scents to it. The nose is amazing on it.
Just like wine lovers want to know how their favorite Pinot Noirs are made,
we're going to see the same phenomenon in cannabis, where people are going to know where Fiddler's Greens are farmed or know the Garden Society farms in Mendocino.
Tune in to DJ Passion from the land of Ganja, the island of Jamaica, when he comes to you live every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on LifestyleRadio.net. Listen in until midnight every weekend as he spins your favorite reggae tunes, including the classics, from Butterfly's Passion, Bed and Breakfast Above Discovery Bay. DJ Passion makes you feel like you are on the island. Head to the land of sun, fun, and Ganja Weekly when you tune in Saturday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to Reggae Saturday with DJ Passion, live here on LifestyleRadio.net. Hi, this is Al Graham of the Pace Radio Show. Are you keeping pace, as in keeping people advocating cannabis education? If you're not, and you're a cannabis consumer, then why not? Others are working hard every day to help educate people about cannabis so you can enjoy your daily 420. Get involved and speak out. Be loud and proud so that you can keep pace. Tune into the Pace Radio Show every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to hear about people advocating cannabis education here on Lifestyle Radio. Hey, we are live and we're back from our break. Oh boy, we lost that one. Well, Kev, we got lots to cover, so we better get at it, eh? Instead of talking about banners.
we're all just yakking away like it's any other day. Oh yeah, we're alive. I forgot about that. We're doing the news.
All right. Well, talking about keeping things secret.
We're going to start off in Alberta having some hushing going on.
That's right. Yeah. Alberta is starting to stockpile their cannabis, but they're not saying where it's being kept. That's a secret.
It's a secret. Mum's the word. Finance Minister Joe Ceci says that cannabis shipments have begun, but he says for security reasons, the province will not be revealing the location.
No, they won't be. But he is pleased with the progress of preparation and says that he believes Alberta is ahead of other provinces. Well, you don't have to look far. Look over in Ontario. We don't even have stores yet.
We have no plan. We have nothing in Ontario. Alberta is definitely leaps and bounds ahead of Ontario. That's for sure.
We have no store information, really.
No.
We got and they put Bill 174 on pause.
Yeah.
So that's not even done. We're even further behind than BC. They've only got 3 stores.
Yeah, but at least they have 3.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, Ontario is Canada's largest province in the country. How can we be coming in last on this?
Yeah, I know. See, if it was obvious the Liberals were going to lose, they should have gone with something that new people wanted.
Yeah, it's just it's discouraging. But
yeah, and they could have had the process started already, so the new government would come in and just take over instead of having to rewrite everything.
Yeah.
All right, well,
Yeah.
So
Anyway, Alberta's got it going on.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Well, talking about going from quiet from where we're stashing it, we're going to the Vancouver to check out the fact that they have announced the police will be able to toke before private time, personal time.
Personal time. You can do what you want. Just make sure that you come to work ready, willing, and able to work. They say that their training around the VPD impairment in the workplace will contain information on the latest research on the use of cannabis. We want to provide our officers with the latest information so they can make informed decisions when it comes to cannabis use and being fit for duty. So they're basically leaving it up to the officers, saying, oh no, our cops are good. They know what to do.
Well, as we've reported here in the past, the Canadian forces, they're refraining from using cannabis 8 hours before they report for duty. And the Vancouver police say they're not going to have any specific time. They just want the officers not to show up stoned.
Yeah, so they're of the opinion that timelines are irrelevant, I guess, and that every individual is different on the how they can handle any consumption, which is a fantastic way to look at it. I wish more people would. My question is, will they be looking at everyday drivers with the same light?
I don't know. Well, they say this policy is the same as what they're doing with the alcohol and prescription drug policy. So it's nice to know that they're keeping it in line with everything and that they haven't scrutinized it even worse than the other two.
Yeah. Well, the Vancouver Police Department should not have a different policy in effect for anybody, officer, and behind the wheel of a motor vehicle than every other driver on the road. If they consumed and they are behind the wheel prior and they're a blow over on the Drager 5000, should they be behind the wheel then? Absolutely not. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you're going to do it to the general public, do it to your force.
Yeah. Well, it also looks like there's something here from the RCMP. Their officers must also be fit for duty when reporting to work, which includes not being impaired by alcohol and other drugs. And they say that in the United States, many of the police forces is legal in that state. They are forbidden for their members from using cannabis.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, some states are coming at it with a complete prohibition standpoint. That's not the way to do things here, but I would love to see a level playing field for our police department workforces, the same as regular drivers on the road. I mean, after all, they're in control of a high-speed, high-powered motor vehicle as well as a gun. If any position is safety sensitive, I would think police services is.
Yeah. Oh, well, it sure is. Exactly. But it'd be interesting to see how things go. Whether that's consistent with all the forces, or some of them, turn the screws down on things and say, no, you can't consume 12 hours before.
Yep. There should be something. You can't just leave this up to the individuals and then turn that around and arrest the guy right in front of you who consumed 8 hours ago, and that cop arresting you consumed 2 hours ago. No.
Well, that would be. Wouldn't that be really brutal? Cop, 2 hours before his duty, and then goes out and arrests somebody like McMahon 10 hours after consuming.
Exactly. I mean, and this is the position that they're going to be in. I mean, how can that be just?
Yeah. Well, as we know, with the military, they can drive, fly, or use a gun 24 hours after consumption, according to our producer. So, those are things that are there.
Yeah. It's a work in progress, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It is. Talking about a work in progress, that happens to do with our laws and condos, bylaws, and everything when it comes to the consumption of cannabis. We're always hearing about how more and more places are banning the consumption of the recreational cannabis in condos. Some are trying to accommodate the medical users. But now we have a situation which is completely different.
Yeah. Yeah. Now we've got a condominium corporation that's actually accommodating to the needs of 420 consumers and medical cannabis patients.
A green-friendly
that-
condo.
Yeah, and that seems to be causing a ruffle in one tenant's feathers.
That's right. Well, back in April, condo board tried to pass a rule that would ban growing and smoking of cannabis in the building's units and commonators, but the condo's owners eventually voted it down. And that concerned the resident there, who in her late teens discovered she had potentially deadly allergy to cannabis at a university party when people around her smoked cannabis. So she's 38 now, so probably like 20 years ago.
Yeah. So she's had one episode in her 20s in university with God only knows what other circumstances were taking place at that time. And this has now ruled her life, from what I understand. Now, I saw the video clip. I saw the one-on-one interview with this woman and her statement. Sorry, but I call bullshit.
Well, she says that her lips started getting tingly and her tongue started to swell and her eyes also got itchy and her nose started to run. She ended up in the hospital, yeah.
Yeah, but, I mean, was it cannabis that she was reacting to? Who's to say? This was many moons ago in her 20s, in a university scene. Anything could have been taking place at that time. We don't know the circumstances. We never will. I know people that have allergy. I know one person that has a cannabis allergy. Not a single person with a cannabis allergy, and I looked it up, has reacted in this manner to secondhand smoke.
Well, she says that it's becoming illegal, it's leaking into the hallways, it's getting into the ventilation system, and that she can't control her environment. It's gotten so bad that she carries an EpiPen with her at all times, puts towels under the door, runs 2 air purifiers, never uses her balcony, and largely avoids common areas except the laundry room.
Yeah, well, we have, little kids that have high allergies to all kinds of toxins out there and substances out there, including peanuts and foods and bugs and bees, me included in that list with the bugs and bees. We carry EpiPens. We do what we need to do. We do desensitization treatments if it means getting us through life when we suffer from bad hay fever and pollen allergies and, oak allergies and every other allergy out there. We do these things and we get through our lives. Anybody that has allergies to the point where they are life-threatening, there is always the option of living in a bubble.
So what happens to the condo owners or the apartment renters who are living in buildings where it's been banned? Other than going to court, the other option would be to move. So does that apply in this instance as well?
Absolutely. She can move, and she can move to another condo, or she can move into a bubble wherever she feels safe. But her issue should not reflect and negate everybody else's rights that live in that building. We all have medical issues that we have to deal with one-on-one. That's our personal issues. We can't expect an entire building of people to take on our burden.
Now, if we want human rights to support our right to be as a right to use cannabis medicinally, does a person have a right to go to human rights cases and say, I have a right not to consume cannabis?
Absolutely. But it's also your right to move and your right to live elsewhere and not infringe your right on someone else's. Odor is not something that can be mandated. We can't start talking about smells and smoke, or what do we do about campfires? What do we do about forest fires? What do we do about incense smoke? What do we do about perfumes?
What about Betty down the hall?
And everything else.
Betty down the hall that's got that terrible, terrible meal that she cooks every once in a while.
There's the curry food is out there. Some people that turns their stomach. We can't start mandating smells and odors and vapors. I mean, let's get real. If somebody's doing something near you that you don't like, do what you've got to do to get over it and live with it or move. Pretty simple.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Yeah. I'm sure that's something that's going to be in the news again as things go along.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Everybody's got a right to live within the legal realm that exists. Cannabis is legal. Get over it.
That's right. Well, now we've gone from a patient who's not a cannabis patient who's fighting against cannabis and people who are fighting for cannabis in our next story.
Yeah, friend of the show. We've had him on. It's been a long time, actually, since we've had him on. We should have him back. We're talking, of course, about Justin Loizos. He's a cannabis patient, and he suffers from chronic pain from multiple sclerosis. He saw the need early on for medicinal cannabis to be available to patients at a local level. Walk-in dispensary where people can come and see medicine, learn about medicine, and purchase medicine. And he opened up a dispensary quite a while ago. Now he's not really sure what to do.
No, he's not. He's, that's the thing. You shut down, and what do you do about those patients who have depended on you all this time?
Yeah.
And he's talked to his lawyer about it, and Justin says his lawyer wants me to take the route of least resistance, the safest path. He says, I'm trying not to screw myself in the sense of trying to go as legal as possible. But despite the risk, he's continuing to give his customers product because they need it.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, there is a need. There's a street front need. We know that. There's no denying it. Many people don't have bank accounts. Other people don't have credit cards. People don't have addresses to get it delivered to. The homeless population that consumes cannabis has to be addressed as well. There's a host of reasons why people don't want to use the online system. What about waiting for a shipment while you're out of meds? And with cannabis, you can go 3 days without your medication because you're waiting for Canada Post. Everywhere else, you can go somewhere and buy the medication when you need it, when you run out. All of these issues are still not being addressed, and dispensaries address them. They are a very much needed resource within our communities for sure.
Yeah, well, Tanya, who's a former co-owner of the Queens of Cannabis, she says about 90% of dispensaries open today are owned by people who want to work in the legal framework. Adding that the recent raids have moved many dispensaries back in the underground.
Yeah, and that's what's going to happen with legalization, especially with these heavy punitive fines that we're seeing in some of the provinces like Ontario for operating a dispensary after the legal regime comes through in October. I mean, they're excessive, to say the least. But so what are these storefront owners to do? They have lists of patients. They're operating as legally as they possibly can. They're following all of Health Canada's guidelines and regulations that are put down by for the LPs to follow. These dispensaries are following them as well. They're following the regs. They're not registered because they're not legally allowed to register. The government is crying and screaming and saying, we don't have people to operate. It's a learning curve. We're learning and we're educating people. We have the framework. They're already there. Why aren't we licensing them?
Yeah, well, that's exactly what Jeffrey, he's the CEO of Next Wave Brands. He thinks the government and cannabis dispensary owners want the same thing, a safe, regulated industry out of the hands of criminals. And the best way to achieve that is for the governments to give gray area players a path out of the wilderness.
Yeah. But instead, a lot of the governments are taking a enforcement approach. I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard that phrase with legalization. I mean, really, guys? You're legalizing this to take it into the next level, but you're still focusing on enforcing anybody who lives outside of your regulations instead of going to them and working with them. They're standing there with open arms and their hands stretched out saying, come here, Give me a license. I want to pay you for that because I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, we're going to throw you in jail instead.
Yeah, well, Tyler James, he's with the group Ontario Cannabis Consumer and Retail Alliance. He agrees with the other fellow there. He says that the most dispensaries want to be on the right side of the law, but they worry about leaving their existing customers in lurch.
Yeah. I mean, as a patient, I can tell you, I depend on those dispensaries when I go to Toronto. I depend on the mail order dispensaries when I'm up in north. The LP produced products that are out there, they just don't cut it. They don't make a lot of them because they're outside of Health Canada regulations, and we're not bringing in edibles for another year and all this kind of stuff. Well, this is the medication that patients have been using to control our symptoms for over 15 years already. And you're telling us, no, you can't use them for a year till we make it legal next year? Are you kidding me? Like I'm going to do that.
Yeah, I'm going to toss away the medicine that works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're not caught up yet. I got to give you time.
Yeah.
Do I? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Just a minute. Let me get on that.
Yeah. Exactly. They're not caught up yet.
Give me a break. Just license these guys already.
And talking about licensing people, let's move on to our next story before we go for another break.
Sounds good. Another lady that really wants to just get legit and help patients, and she's being persecuted, and we're heading out to the East Coast.
Yes, we are. The RCMP raided a dispensary down there, as we all know. Higher Living Wellness Center, their dispensary in Greenwood, was raided by officers.
Yeah, friend, of course, everybody knows Debbie Stoltz-Giffen. She's co-host on the Pace Radio Show here on Lifestyle Radio as well. She is a very big part of this and what's going on down there, working in conjunction with Heidi and with Mum and pushing the agenda for medical patients and in their region down there.
Oh,
and this has been a big blow.
She gets the photo in the article too.
Yeah, she gets the photo in the article. She's there appearing outside of Higher Wellness there, Higher Living Wellness, and she's pissed.
Yeah, she's not happy whatsoever. And she's on the Pace Radio Show this week as the joint host.
Yeah, so we'll be hearing about all of this for sure.
I'm sure we will. All right. So yeah, Heidi's been arrested.
Yeah, they held her for the weekend. They didn't give her bail on Friday. They said, nope, too late, past the deadline, you're staying for the weekend. So they held her for the weekend. There was a big turnout at the courthouse this morning, I know that, to support Heidi and await her release. Higher Living Wellness was raided. Heidi was arrested along with a couple of other people, and we're awaiting to hear charges, I think.
3 other dispensaries were also raided. So it sounds like there's 4 of them.
Yeah.
I'm understanding Heidi is now out of the hospital. I'm getting messages here.
Out of jail?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Heidi, it says she is out. Just saw a picture on Facebook.
Awesome. Perfect. So she has been released today. She is free. I'm sure her supporters are gathering around, and the supporters of Higher Willing Wellness. Heidi Chartrand does great things for patients down there. She's been helping patients a lot for a long time, bringing them products that they need to help with their illnesses that you cannot buy anywhere else. The cops going after these guys is just another show of force that they're trying to shut everybody down before legalization. So the big boys and the corporate boys will have the only products that are available to people to purchase. And I mean, once again, it comes down to the almighty buck, right?
Yeah, well, Debbie, as we know, Debbie Stoltz-Giffen, she says that my biggest concern is that this is but the tip of the iceberg. This day in particular is the catalyst for the rest of the dispensaries in the province being raided. I fear and stymied by the government. In light of legalization looming in less than a month, it hardly seems coincidental that we're hearing of now the 4th dispensary in this area being raided by the police.
Yeah, paving the way.
Yep, she says we think it's deliberate effort on behalf of the combined federal and provincial governments to stymie and put an end to medical dispensaries.
Sad days across the country, and indeed in Nova Scotia.
Yeah. For sure. And we're going to see more and more of this across the province.
Oh, for sure.
Across the country, sorry.
Yeah.
The country.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. There's going to be a lot of heavy-handedness going on in the next few weeks.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'm not sure where this is. I think this is a quote from Heidi. They look at it like we're criminals, but they're refusing to see the patients on the other end of it. We're willing to buy this product. If there's no victim, then how is there a crime?
That's right. No victim, no crime. And that's what we've been arguing from the get-go. Government's answer so far to legalization is coming up short, to say the least.
Yeah. A lot of people not happy with it. All right, Kim, let's take a break.
Sounds good.
All right, it's break time, as I said. Time for Kim and I to get medicated, and then after that, we'll be back. And you're going to be hearing some more of, the cannabis and wine video. You're going to be hearing some more of that audio, as well as some more from the salads. You're listening to the Reefer Reporters. We are live here on lifestyleradio.net.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
In Northern California, private wine and weed dinners have become popular, but some winemakers see potential areas of conflict.
I see cannabis production as a direct competitor for workers.
Vineyard owner Kathleen Inman says she already has trouble finding enough pickers to harvest her grapes. She supports legalized marijuana, but says it's going to make the problem even worse.
We also have competition for consumer dollars, particularly at the mid-range and lower range.
Inman says she knows some winemakers who might be open to the idea of planting cannabis, but federal alcohol laws stand in the way.
Because we have federal permits and because it's a Class 1 drug, it means if you were to be prosecuted for growing marijuana, you could risk losing your winery permit.
So, will a green gold rush bring scores of new growers to the region? Not so fast, say elected officials and experts. Cannabis growers will have to meet a complicated set of standards on zoning, energy, and pesticide use.
Cannabis is going to be the most highly regulated agricultural commodity in the state of California.
Meaning that even though a glass of wine and a joint might seem like a natural pairing to some, for the next few years at least, these two cash crops will have to grow apart.
I think there's going to be more open grows and more beautiful farms like we see here, but I also think there's still going to be a dominance of the wine industry.
For Today, Joe Fryer, NBC News.
Are you looking for cannabis news, education, and people's opinions? Are you looking to learn what Canadian and international cannabis advocates are doing, not only now, but what got them to this point in their lives, and what does the future hold for them? Do you want to learn how patients are using cannabis as their daily medication, or learn how their cannabis use helps them with their medical condition? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then I'm going to suggest to you to tune in to Lifestyle Radio. Catch their live weekly shows and have your questions and concerns answered and find the experience you're looking for. Monday, catch your weekly news broadcast with the Reefer Reporters. Then on Wednesday, get several hours worth of cannabis public education. We get things started with cannabis and coffee with marijuana. Then tune in and catch Pottawa with Russell Barth, who calls himself the world's angriest pothead. Finish up your evening with the award-winning Pace Radio Show with Al Graham and joint host Kim Cooper and Alicia Yashishin. No week would be complete without tuning into Friday night's program, the 420 Radio Show, featuring Al Rapp and the 420 Radio crew, Mary Jane Baker and Marcel Gignac. Cannabis is a lifestyle, and you can catch all your cannabis lifestyle information right here at lifestyleradio.net or at our sister site, 420radio.ca.
I'm fine, feeling kinda good. I read because of a debate. I'm mad, I'm a watch movie. A good movie, real good movie. Hey, red wine goes nice with some weight. Makes me wanna be the DJ. And my lady, she knows how to move it. Shake a booty, watch pumping on with it.
We're back from our medication session and checking on the dog. Kim and I still have lots to cover here on the Reefer Reporters. So, Kim, let's finish up our Reefer Report. She's probably still off on break.
I'm back. I'm back.
You're back. How's the dog?
Everybody's good.
Everybody's good. Good. That's good.
Everybody's good.
All right, you're finished. You ready to wrap her up?
Sure.
All right, let's get down to our last stories here. And
Sounds
this is an update from a previous story that we had spoken about, and that happened to do with a Toronto Transit Commission subway operator who was using cannabis oil as medication, and she got demoted.
Yeah, this Toronto Transit Commission employee says she's back on opiates because her employer said she can't use medical cannabis and remain as a subway operator. They're quite happy with her using opiates and remaining as a subway operator, which give her, chronic fatigue and tiredness and listlessness and everything else, but that's okay.
Yeah. She said that the TCC offered her other non-safety sensitive positions if she wanted to stay on medical cannabis, but she had to take a big pay cut for that. So she feels betrayed by the company, especially when there's people making decisions on my life and they have never seen me face to face.
Yeah, some of the doctors that are analyzing her case and giving their 2 cents worth haven't even seen this patient. They haven't examined her. They haven't talked to her. They're going strictly by rule of the book by the TTC Commission and what they want. I mean, this isn't even. I don't know how this can be happening.
Yeah, that's right. Well, she says that with these opiates, including Percocets and Oxys, but her doctor says that they are less effective. And they go on to say that they cause her to be groggy, forgetful, and feel like a zombie. I've heard that a lot of time.
Yep. Groggy, forgetful, and I feel like a zombie. But that's allowable to do the job of operating Toronto subways. Wrap your head around that for a minute. How many people are moved on Toronto subways every day? And she is allowed to go to work on Percocets knowing she feels groggy, forgetful, and like a zombie. And she is legally allowed and permitted to operate that machine.
She's allowed, yes.
Run a subway.
She's allowed to use the opiate drugs as her medication.
That's perfectly fine.
But as we were talking about earlier with the police and all that, there is a time restriction for her. If she's on the opiate drugs, which she's allowed to take, she has to wait 8 hours before her shift, before she can take any more. So there's an 8-hour break in there for her from her taking her last medication to when she's operating. But they don't offer her that with the cannabis.
No.
They offer her a pay reduction job.
Why isn't there an 8-hour limit for the cannabis then?
Correct.
I mean, it's a legal drug in this country, prescribed by a physician for almost 2 decades now.
Yeah.
When are these people going to catch up?
Well, they say that the TCC says that independent medical experts have advised the transit agency not to allow any employee in a safety-sensitive position to use any form of cannabis because they could get intoxicated.
But it's okay for police services.
Yeah. You go out and chase people down in a car.
Carry a gun. Yep. Chase them down in a car. But you can't run a subway.
Now, and the thing about this is that this lady is prescribed CBD oil.
Yeah, that's the kicker to all of this. She isn't even on a high THC oil. She's on CBD oil. And no matter what percentage your CBD is, you will still always test positive for THC because there's no such thing as pure CBD that doesn't have any THC in it. It doesn't exist. It even exists in hemp.
You know how we mentioned how she felt groggy? She was in the fog with her opiate drugs. She says after 3 days on the oil, she couldn't believe the difference. She was like, "Wow, this is a miracle."
Yeah, she could walk around. She could perform her duties. She had, a relatively good life where she was more pain free than she's ever been before, and
Slept
she was
better.
fully functional.
Yeah, slept better. She could walk better. Her quality of life was better. And
she was back to normal.
And they wouldn't even allow that same 8-hour time frame as they would do with an opiate drug.
Yeah. Well, she says she's not fighting just for herself. Farrell's union has taken up her case and may take it to binding arbitration. So it's not quite over yet. The union has observed a pattern of discriminatory treatment by the TTC towards employees who require medical cannabis, said Frank Grimaldi, president of Local 3113 of the Amalgamated Transit Union. So maybe an ongoing situation?
Yeah, well, her doctor, Dr. Verbora, he says interfering with her and giving her an ultimatum that she can go back on opiates so she can drive or face financial consequences seems invidious. The reality is that I'm not overly convinced that driving a TTC bus on opioids is any safer.
That's right. That's right. I mean, how can any workplace mandate what drugs you take for your condition? That's something that's done between you and your physician. This case will be precedent setting, I'm sure, in many industries across the country that are looking at these same protocols.
Yeah, it's one of many challenges that are going to happen to patients as time moves along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
And these are types of things that could end up in, let's say, a museum.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Things that I'll be looking back at 100 years, shaking their head, going, really? This is what they did with their court time?
That's right. Exactly. And talking about museums, we see here in Las Vegas, they have opened a museum that celebrates all things cannabis.
Yeah. Museums, and more museums in Las Vegas. That's one thing that there is for sure. And it's about time this one opened. It looks, from the photos that I've seen, like it's really bright and colorful and attractive. And it's got a giant glass bong that's bigger than a giraffe.
Yeah, but glass bong. Yep, a glass bong taller than a giraffe, huggable cannabis buds, fake ones, and a pool foam of weed nuggets.
Yeah. So you can, I guess, get in this thing. Apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. You won't be able to light up. You can't smoke anything in there as well.
Yeah. It's a smoke-free area. It is a museum. Most museums you can't smoke in. So okay, they called it a museum, so you're not allowed to puff there.
A made-for-social media museum.
Yeah, made for social media. So as you're walking through, there's spots for you to do selfies. There's selfie stations and talking stuff that talks to you as you walk through. There's a worry-free filter for hashtagging on your tweets and your comments as you're going through the facility.
Yeah, well, they say, according to the founders, they say that their goal is destigmatizing cannabis use.
Good goal. Can't argue with the goal.
That's right.
Yeah. Guests will wander through 12 installations with rooms like Seed, where people can lie down in a bed shaped like marijuana seed, and Grow, which features artificial plants in sizes ranging from inches to feet tall, placed under bright lights to represent an indoor cannabis grow facility.
Yep. Photo ops are available under a glow-in-the-dark tree next to a giant cannabis leaf meant to represent an edible gummy, and by a 24-foot tall, that's 7 meters, glass bong that's dubbed Bongzilla and billed as the world's largest bong.
The world's largest bong, only in Vegas. The museum is in downtown Vegas, the entertainment district, and it's not the Smithsonian of marijuana, but it does have some educational components, according to this article. Guests get an introduction from museum guides, and some graphics on walls explain how concentrates are made and the difference between indica and sativa cannabis strains.
Yep. Many of the facilities' exhibits are sponsored by cannabis companies with their logos on display. It's common for museums to receive a support of corporations, and this is just a cannabis one instead of one full of art. So,
yeah, I mean, it's all about social media for sure. Walker, the founder, has invented reality TV stars, models, and other influencers. Invited, sorry, and Las Vegas for the weekend with the charge of spreading the word about the facility. As for those who buy a ticket and their Instagram followers are only in the dozens or hundreds, Walker said you're still an influencer to your friends.
Yeah, he's right there. You sure are.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how many friends you got out there, you still can influence them.
Yeah. So really geared to the social media aspect. A lot of hashtag going on, Instagram followers and Twitter followers alike, I guess, as well as Facebook and other platforms. So it's definitely interesting. I know somebody that was going there, so I'm gonna get the down low on it, and hopefully for the next show I'll have some info.
Yeah, okay, all right, sounds good. Well, we're going from a company that's having a lot of fun with cannabis to a company that's not having so much fun, and they're threatening legal battle with the feds.
Yeah, lots of BS going down south of the border in California. California has legalized cannabis. The problem is the distribution model they're using. Law enforcement that are on the federal level are using their databases and their information that's on the electronic highway to basically snatch up people as they're distributing their product from one location to another and seizing it. They're placing raids on grow ops and dispensaries and that kind of thing, and confiscating property and laying charges on a federal level for something that's legal in the state.
So they're driving on a federal highway instead of a state highway?
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing there? And that's
That's what they're doing. And so they're using the current state level transmissions to bust people.
Yeah. Well, they say here during one of the stops by the California Highway Police, there was one of the Wild Rivers, must be a dispensary. Their employees identified themselves and their state legal business, but were handcuffed and taken to the substation according to the release. The odd thing is, the employees are former police officers.
Yep, they are. And they think they're in on a legal business in the state of California, and then the feds swoop in. And they confiscate, and the big problem is the confiscation and seizure of property. They're seizing everything, and they're taking it, saying that it's proceeds of crime. So they're taking all of the bounty. They're taking property. They're taking literal, production houses. Okay, now I own your warehouse. That kind of thing. And they're putting these companies out of business. And these are companies that have paid state registration fees. They pay taxes. They have employees, all registered employees with the state. What is all of this money to the state going for if it isn't for protection?
Yeah. Exactly. And the fact that a federal highway.
Yeah. This is the issue in the U.S.
Yeah,
that's why they've got that cross thing going on. State, federal law don't meet, right? Which is where we're very different in Canada. But over there, just because your state's legal, it's not legal still federally. You can still wind up in a whole world of trouble. And even legitimate business people are finding this out.
That'd be like saying that you couldn't drive down our provincial highway, but you could drive down our secondary roads.
That's right. So if they would have took a different route, the federales, as they call them, wouldn't have been able to snatch them up.
Oh, wow. Pretty sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, operating legal business. Driving the wrong highway to get
my question to the California entrepreneurs out there jumping into the brand new industry that's taking place, what incentive is this to get involved, to go legit? If your movements, because the state has records of the movements of your product, they've now given that access to the feds, who are now tracking everything you do. How is that an incentive to go legal?
It's not.
Well, this is going to be a big issue, right?
Yeah. It's going to be. Yeah. As we've been saying, there's going to be issues all the way along here. It's going to be years before any of this gets smoothed out.
Oh, it took us 100 years to get here. We ain't fixing it.
That's right. People are still trying to improve access to alcohol, and alcohol has been legal almost for 100 years. So.
Yeah.
All right, talking about legalization, let's head off to South Africa. This is our final story of the show too, actually.
Yeah, final story of the show. We'll go across seas into South Africa. The highest court in the land says they have to legalize the use of the cannabis for adults in private places in South Africa.
Doesn't that sound familiar? Private places?
Private places. Of course, there's all kinds of, codicils on this. Private places was one of the big ones for sure.
Well, they said that...
Go ahead.
They say that the pro-cannabis activists cheered in the public gallery and chanted, "Weed are free now," when the Constitutional Court gave its landmark ruling.
Yeah, and it was a
unanimous.
Yeah, unanimous ruling. The judges also legalized the growing of cannabis for sale and private consumption. For private consumption. South Africa's government had opposed its legalization, arguing the drug was harmful to people's health.
Yeah, well, 3 cannabis users who had faced prosecution for using the drug brought the case, saying the ban intrudes and justifiably into their private spheres.
Good argument in South Africa, and I guess the courts there bought it with the unanimous verdict. So in the judgment, the Deputy Justice Raymond Zondo said it will not be a criminal offense for an adult person to be in possession of cannabis in private for his or her personal consumption. It will, however, remain illegal to use cannabis in public and to sell and to supply it.
That sounds to me almost like home decriminalization.
Yeah. It's a start. It's not really true legalization in the full sense of the word, but we don't have that in Canada either yet.
No.
So, I mean, it's a start. For this country, it's a step in the right direction towards legalization, and it's definitely a victory for the 3 men that were on trial.
Oh. Yep, the Cannabis Development Council of South Africa welcomed the ruling and called on the government to drop charges against people found in possession of it. Jeremy Acton, the leader of the Daga Party, which campaigns for the use of cannabis, said the ruling should have gone further to legalize the carrying of cannabis in public.
Yeah, and that will be their next challenge. These things take time, as we all know. Baby steps when dealing with government agencies, no matter what side of the planet you live on. They're all pretty much the same, I think, from what I've seen so far. So the court gave Parliament 24 months' time to change the law reflecting the ruling. Adults who use cannabis in private would be protected by the ruling until the law is amended.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they got 24 months, eh? They got 2 years to change the law. 2
years to change the law, but they can still not charge anybody until the law is changed.
Yeah, and I guess the courts didn't specify quantities or anything like that, but that all comes down to the people who are creating the law, where that is all decided. That shouldn't be up to the court. Well, it did happen here, where Judge Phelan told us we were only carrying 150 grams, right?
Yeah. Canada's a different kind of breed, though, right? We'll have to wait and see how this plays out down there. Zimbabwe in April became the second country in Africa after Lesotho to legalize the use of cannabis for medical use. Just a side note there. Things are happening in the other side of the world.
That's right. Well, maybe they'll have enough that they can import to Canada because their patients,
we might need to be finding some new strains for patients, I think.
Yeah, that's right. All right, Kim, that was it. That's the last story for this week.
Awesome. It's been a busy week in cannabis, and I don't expect it to slow down anytime soon with legalization on the horizon. It's only going to get busier.
I completely agree. Okay, that's our Reefer Report for September the 24th, 2018. As we close the show, we'd like to say thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed it, please share it with someone that loves the news, even if they don't love cannabis. Until the next time, don't forget to educate, medicate, and do not incarcerate.
Bark at you later.
So what are you doing? Nothing. Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.